of EDvantage India. And today we have with us a very special guest, Stelter. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right.
You're close enough, Keith Stelter, but I'll take any way you got it. I'm sure I'll mispronounce some things today as well.
Okay, Keith Stelter, right? Okay. So he is an internationally experienced oil and gas professional who is currently seeking his next role by successfully marketing himself on LinkedIn. With an average monthly viewership in excess of 100K views, 18 years of operational experience is being pivoted into a LinkedIn influencer and marketing specialist. Raised on a farm in Canada, now residing in Texas with wife and two young children. Okay, that's great. So, do you want to proceed with anything that you want, or should I start away with the questions that I have?
However you want to do it. Yeah. Experienced wireline, from field engineer to area manager. And now the work I've been doing on LinkedIn has been picking up more and more viewership. Like this month, I'll probably hit about 200,000 views and making appearances on David Gibson's show as well. And few other invites this as well. So thank you for having me. So however you want to do it, I'm more than happy to answer your questions or do whatever you need me to do.
Okay, so from David Gibson, right? So we had a session with him actually before you as well. He's a wonderful, wonderful person. And yeah, so I guess I would start with the questions then.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So as you told me, yeah, so many domains you've been into. So just in your words, explain the audience your entire journey.
So I grew up on a farm in northern Canada. My father, we worked grain and cattle farm, pig farm. And then in Canada, it freezes during the wintertime, and that's when the majority of Canada's oil field is the busiest. So he would haul rigs with a winch tractor and haul them from site to site. So I got exposed to the oil field at a very early age. Um, I actually didn't originally go into the oil field. I went to school for civil engineering and was going to build roads. And after about 3 years of that, I didn't really enjoy it. And then Schlumberger came and recruited me. I started in wireline in Canada, eventually got transferred with Schlumberger down to the US to the Barnett Shale was a very big shale play, one of the first shale plays in the US. And after that, I left Schlumberger, went back up to Canada, and horizontal completions started becoming a big thing up there. So I became a manager for the first time up in Canada for Weatherford. And then after that, jumped around a little bit, did some well site consulting, went overseas with some ex-Schlumberger guys to a company in Iraq called Oil Serve. Worked there for a year, came back. Me and my wife, we eventually started having a family, so we moved back to Texas, where she's originally from. And now I find myself in West Texas, where I was working for Weatherford again as the area manager for wireline, open hole, cased hole, and eventually Weatherford US wireline shut down, went back to Schlumberger, was selling wireline products, and then COVID-19 hit and they shut that down as well. So I find myself, I was at home for the first time, didn't know anybody to get a job. So I had to, I just couldn't sit at home, wait for the phone to ring. So I started putting out content on LinkedIn. And for whatever reason, people started liking it and sharing it. And that's how I went from, just doing the odd little picture and a couple words to, some of my stuff gets, I think the biggest post I've ever had 115,000 views on just one post. So it's, been a weird little up and down journey, but now I find myself, people are beginning to hire again in the US. So I had 3 or 4 interviews last week, and I hope to, release who I'm going to choose here by the end of the month. So it's looking good, but you never know in this crazy world we live in.
Okay, so since you told me that from not enjoying, then moving to Schlumberger to Rutherford, so you know, to uh, commute so much, you need to have that one or two very necessary skill sets that form a part of your core. So, what according to you are those skill sets which are required now also? And at that time when you were shifting from one place to another in terms of job, that helped you a lot.
Uh, so the experience at Schlumberger, they have the best training as far as wireline goes, bar none. There's lots of good companies out there for the training, but after working, starting early in my career for Schlumberger, that's a big attraction for a lot of other companies. And then a lot of it is the confidence to do so, to walk into an office where these powerful people, long-term managers are looking for someone to work for them, is to have the confidence to look them in the eye and tell them without hesitation that you can do the job. So I had the experience from working in the Barnett Shale, the horizontals. They were looking for somebody who had that experience, and I was able to convey, as such. And the training I received at Schlumberger was great. Like some people like working at big companies, some people like working at small companies. I definitely at some point, don't be scared for working at a large company, because the training is so good there.
Okay, so according to you, the good training which made you quite learned in the field, that helped you a lot, right?
Yeah.
So it's been 2 decades almost in the industry, and tell me, how has wireline changed, and how would it progress now as per you?
uh, in North America, wireline has gone from this very technical, very smart service that in other words, like we were the nerds of the oil field. The drillers might be the jocks, if that kind of translate correctly. But wireline was always kind of the nerds. Now with the shale push, that has changed big time. 90% of the market is just perforating horizontals, and they don't even use depth control. So wireline is not what it used to be. And it's very unfortunate because the big company like Schlumberger and Weatherford, Halliburton, Baker had such great technologies, could do such amazing things, and now it's been pushed off to the side, and it's become more like a manufacturing as fast as you can do it kind of industry. I believe overseas it's not really the case. There's still lots of great wireline working, but in North
Okay.
America, it's not the same.
Okay, so since you put on a difference from overseas and America, how since you've worked both in US and Canada, how is the nature of working different? Like Canada has oil sands,
Sorry, what was that?
maybe some disturbance. Sahil Trivedi, I request you to please unmute yourself.
All
Sahil,
right,
oh God, that
good.
okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so I was saying that since you've worked in so many regions, and you mentioned about this, I would like to ask that Canada has oil sands, whereas US has both conventional shale and offshore. So how are these any different from working in the Middle East? Like,
The tar sands or the oil sands in Canada, it exists, but it's a very, very small market. So the amount of trucks and companies that need to service it is very small. So one or two companies is more than enough to cover the activity. So it's very hard for someone to make their way over there, as well as offshore in the U.S. Offshore is you know hasn't really recovered. It's been very slow for the last 4 or 5 years, and with some of the new administration coming in, some of the offshore drilling bans, it's very hard to break into those. But yes, there is still technical work being done in North America, but it's it's only 10% or less, I would say, of the entire market overall.
Okay, okay. So, since you mentioned that you've worked in big names like Schlumberger and Weatherford, um, if you have to like ponder upon one and name one, which one would you say is preferable and why?
Uh, I would say, if as far as a wireline stance, Schlumberger is definitely the choice. They put more R&D into wireline than any other product line. Uh, Not to say like everything that they have is the best. You know, they have a division through bit, which is slim open hole tools that run, in memory predominantly in tight hole situations. That Weatherford, probably it's called their compact line, has better, tools. However, anything that Weatherford has overall as far as technology, they have a good rounded base, don't get me wrong, but Schlumberger really is, probably 5 to 10 years ahead in a lot of their research and development. They have major product lines. Weatherford, that's not really their focus as a company. They like drilling, they like a lot of the products. So it's really not their focus. They're good at it, but it's not their main game like Schlumberger is.
Okay, so this was about the technical part of it. Now, since you've also been into the managerial experience, from other traditional companies, how being a manager for an oil and gas sector stands different?
Uh, it's evolving every day. You have to be definitely aware of the diversity of the workforce now. 20 years ago it was predominantly farm boys coming in and working hard and then moving up the ladder. Today it's a wide range of personalities, from people overseas coming in, from traditional farm boys. So women bigger and bigger. I was very blessed to where I started at Schlumberger. There was lots of women working, so I never saw it as something strange. The fastest perforator we had was a woman named Jen Goulding. She could do a shallow gas perforating run in under 2 minutes. So the head of Schlumberger was a woman named Catherine Hughes, and a lot of the sales people that I worked with, they were also women. So the diversity of the market I started with, I was very fortunate. I've never known anything but a diverse workforce. A lot of other people weren't, so lucky. So as it changes, they either change with it or they get upset by it. So if you're going to get into management, you have to be aware of that. And I think that's one of the biggest pushes right now.
Okay. So, since we talk about women in the sector, Keith, there are many companies still and many regions still that do not consider women being in the field, and they still feel that still discrimination is there. So, anything that you have to say on that?
You know, uh, be it depends on the region, right? uh, and the person. Maybe one person is, against it. There's going to be someone, like myself or at another business that isn't, because like I said, it's the world's been ever changing. Especially for me, 20 years I've been seeing it just get better and better and better. And I think there's, more places open to it now than are closed. Definitely not to say that it doesn't exist by any means, but like I said, the fastest perforator I've ever witnessed in my entire life was a woman. She worked harder and faster than anybody. Like I thought I was pretty good, but I was never as fast as she was. So that always, was something to look up to.
Okay, great. That's great to hear. Now, when we are progressing into a world of artificial intelligence and real-time data analytics, so would it have an effect on the wireline logging experience? And if it would, then how would it be changing the dynamics of it?
Well, I think it's already here. Companies are already putting forward what's called remote logging. Instead of
Right.
having the engineer on location, they have a data center, say in Houston or a head office somewhere, and basically the truck goes out to location, the tools go out to location, some guys hook it up, put it in the well, and then they just connect the either the satellite dish or through the cell signal, and it gets run through that way. It's becoming more and more automation. I actually have something I'm working on as well, an idea to help automate a lot of the perforating that's downhole, so that you don't need an engineer on location to run and worry about depth control, that it all just kind of gets put downhole and set up automatically. So it's already here, and I think it's only going to get bigger and bigger.
Of course. Now, when these are taking away the need of an engineer in field, does that also mean that it's reducing, the employment of engineers in the field then?
To a certain extent, in certain areas, yes, but at the same time, it's going to open up, I think, windows in research and development, the support. Uh, so I think those opportunities are always going to be there. Oil and gas is still predominant around the world as the main energy source. So, you're always going to need that influx of new people. Uh, over here in North America, the baby boomers are retiring every day. So even though there might not be as many positions as there once was, a really large group of the population is retiring.
Right. So, since remote logging has already been in and we are progressing, so for a candidate that's a fresh petroleum engineer and is just entering the industry, what necessarily should he or she have? Since now we are also moving towards remote logging and stuff like that. So, what should be one having?
The biggest thing that I've seen when they're recruiting engineers, you already have the knowledge that they want. There is no wireline school that you can take at university. Each
Right.
company, Weatherford or something, so they train you. So they're just looking for people who can learn. What sets people apart is a lot of the manual labor and not being afraid to get dirty, get your hands dirty. It doesn't last a long time in your career, but they're looking for people who will get out of the office, go out to the rig site, and really get in there should the need arise, right? It doesn't happen a lot, but so, volunteering for, one thing is Habitat for Humanity here in North America. It's where they
Right.
build homes for underprivileged families. That's manual labor. There people are banging nails, they're painting walls, they're doing that kind of stuff. And if you have that manual labor with that education, you're going to rise to the forefront on someone's entry level, pick right away, because they know you have the smarts, then you have the physical ability. Maybe you don't have access to that. So, working out, hobbies, that sort of stuff, anything that's physical in addition to the education is going to be a big draw.
Right. So, before I proceed to the last question, I would request the participants if they have any questions, you can put down in the chat box. And lastly, I'd like to ask that from your experience, so many years, any favorite memory that you would want to share with us that gave you a learning as well?
Uh, One little story I like to tell was I was the operations manager of Canada for Tucker. It was after Weatherford. It was my first kind of, I had Tucker kind of wasn't very large, but we had 3 bases. And one day we had a particular logging tool that was set up for shallow gas wells. Instead of doing the open hole, they would run casing, and then they would just run this, basically a combination of nuclear and sonic data to, basically find coal bed seams or basically shallow gas seams is what we called it in Alberta.
Okay.
And the nuclear source was screwed into the bottom of the tool. It wasn't in a source door like a lot of other tools. It was a little bit different design, but the tool was getting older and had metal threads. So basically you had this tool like this kind of connected, and then this little source tied to the bottom. And one day I got a call from the field. The guys were logging. They're like, man, the tool stopped working. And I'm like, oh, okay, we'll bring it to surface and let's check it out. A couple minutes later, they get it to surface. They call me. They're like, oh my God, the source is gone. What are we gonna do? And I'm like, I'm thinking about it, and it was a horizontal well, so it basically kicked off. So I knew that, even if the source dropped, it wasn't going to be damaged. It was going to just slide down the deviation. So I knew a fishing hand in the area, and I knew he had a magnet and a few other things for fishing out small items at a well. So I got him to location within an hour. He got an adapter, tied the threads to our tool, and I just sent the tool back down hole with the guys. And they went as far as they could. And then we started bringing the tool back up into the well. And then I got them to stop and then slowly lower back down and log the area where they stopped. And sure enough, because we had stopped the source there, it heated up the zone. So the gamma ray had this big spike. So I just had them continue up slowly up the surface, and they made it to the top of the well, and right on the magnet was the radioactive source. So basically, instead of panicking and getting a whole bunch
Right.
of fishing people and coil tubing and rigs, we just thought outside the box, and within 4 hours we had the problem fixed. So for such a major disaster, like if you tell people in Wireline that you lost a source, like that's as major a problem as you can face. The fact that we were able to fix it in 4 hours always kind of stands out in my mind. If that, hopefully I explained the story. I know if you don't know Wireline tools or sources, maybe that story doesn't make a lot of sense, but hopefully I conveyed it.
Of course, anybody who's not even into wireline can make that, acting at the moment, what we call. So, what actually you think has in you as a skill set or as maybe a practice from years that drives you every time, like this experience, to act at the moment and take a wise decision and take that risk and prevent the company from a major disaster like this?
Uh, Growing up on a farm, uh, basically we were on our own, so we had to solve a lot of our own issues. And if you know, wherever you start out, you can either make the decision that let the boss, tell you
Okay.
what to do, or you can try and decide, how can I fix this situation, right? We're
Okay.
not always going to be right, but if you have a problem and try and fix it on your own first, learn from it and move forward. Now, at the same time, if you have a boss and you do have a problem, don't just go and tell them about your problem. Tell them the problem and then give them like two possible solutions on top.
Solutions.
And
Right.
that person, they're gonna learn, they're gonna listen, and they'll be like, okay, go with solution A that you just proposed, and you're gonna have a whole lot more success moving forward, solving your own issues, doing that kind of strategy.
Okay. So self effort is very much needed. That's what I get from the answer. Okay.
Definitely.
Right. Anybody from the audience that wants to put in any questions, or else I would be concluding the session. Anything? Okay. Okay, I have a question from Yash. I'm not a data-driven student about to complete my studies this month of May. I'm a fresh and I'm interested to pursue my career as a driller. If it is as easy as go to career option in company website, I would not be here. Other than my technical knowledge, what would you like to advise on my thoughts?
So drilling is, a pretty, being around a drill site is a pretty labor intensive industry. So I had mentioned before, anything that you can volunteer, like I'm not sure what exactly some of the charities or other jobs, but something manual labor intensive, something where you're demonstrating that you're not afraid to get your hands dirty is going to go a long way, because they're going to see that, okay, you have the studies, you have the experience, the education. Can you physically uh, you know do the job out there? The drilling collars, all that are very, very heavy. You're not going to have to move it very often. There's lots of labor on site, but they don't want to have someone who's afraid to get their hands dirty. So that's what I would add to, you know, to separate yourself from a big list of candidates out there.
Okay, I hope Yash, you got the answer. Anybody else? Keith, do you want to add on something which I would have missed in the questions and you would like to convey to the audience?
Uh, no, one thing, well, yes, you're starting out now. One big mistake, a couple big mistakes I made in my career early on was not being positive enough and not building my network large enough. Don't be afraid to go out to meet people. It doesn't matter, even if they're not, the boss of somewhere else or a company. You never know where somebody might, you run into them down the line. They might have a brother, they might have a sister, or somebody who might in the end have a connection. So I didn't really get out there too much early in my career. I was operations, and now looking back, trying to network now, it's a little late, even though still working on it. Network and always be positive. Your company or whoever you're going to work for is going to set goals that are, you think are sky high, and you'll be like, I'll never make that goal. Never have that as the attitude. Always take it as a challenge. You thought you could do, let's say, 5 jobs in a week or something for whatever it is, and the boss wants 10. Well, maybe he really only wants 7, but if you thought you could only do 5, you weren't going to push yourself enough. So it also forces ingenuity and a lot of other things. So I was a little bit too, I would say, you know, everything was very realistic, but I should have taken it as more of a challenge and been a lot more positive in the thinking when it comes to that.
Okay, so networking is as important as the knowledge that you have. Okay, so Dirisu Christian is asking, what is the outlook for the industry as it relates to drilling services owing to energy transitions? As a petroleum engineer just starting out, what are your thoughts? I guess,
Does that look for industry as it relates to drilling services? Well, the drilling services is going to be doing more and more with geothermal and exploration. Like already here in the U.S., Arizona, for instance, they were drilling wells looking for helium, right? So there is a market. There's also geothermal and a few other areas where they're going to be using existing services that was traditionally all oil, and now they're going to pivot and go to a few different other areas, right? uh, I would expect that drilling is going to be around for years and years to come. It's maybe not as big forever, but at the same time, global demand isn't going away, and they're going to be moving from places where it may not have been as economical to finding insight in ways to make it economical to drill those areas. So I think we're still good for the next 30, 40 years at least.
So I have one other question from Rushikesh. Actually, this is a very common question we receive, especially from the people who are new to the industry. What will be the scenario after COVID-19? How would that affect the employment in oil and gas field?
So basically, COVID-19 has forced a lot of, evolution to, digital media, things like this. They're going to be looking for people that didn't just sit around and wait for you know, the pandemic to pass. They're going to look for
Right.
people that who, tried to do something about it, grew like myself. I could have waited, for just the phone to ring. I got on LinkedIn. I did videos, posts, all kinds of interactions online and network online stuff, these activities. That's the kind of stuff a lot of employers are going to want. They're going to want to know who you know, what you did, how you handled the crisis, because there's going to be another crisis down the road, and they're going to look for people that didn't panic, that basically thought outside the box, were creative, and moved forward, right? And relationships are going to be huge. So during this time, you've better been on LinkedIn or whatever platform it was, and try to make some connections and make your opportunities happen versus waiting for them to come.
Okay, so
Wireline operator, what would you advise for me for my carrier? What do you mean by carrier? Like, oh, career, I'm guessing is what you're saying. So I'm not familiar with all the areas for wireline there, but the biggest thing is for a wireline operator is actually taking care of the truck. And as long as you know how to change oil, grease joints, look after the drum, there a lot of uh, service companies are looking for that kind of knowledge because internally they don't have a good training for that. Internally, like their management is wireline engineers, so they're really good at tools. They have lots of documentation on how to rebuild their wireline tools, but they're not mechanics, and there's no
right.
mechanics in the upper management. So as an operator, if you bring a lot of that knowledge with you, advertising, hey, not only am I a wireline operator who can put tools together, but I can really take care of the truck, you're going to stand out and be a benefit to that wireline manager, I would say.
Okay. So I guess to conclude, some of the qualities that I noticed in your answers. Number one, to be brave and not to be hesitant in putting efforts from your end before going to the boss, right? Number two was knowledge, of course. And number three would be networking through LinkedIn. I guess that's a major aspect that you want to put forward. So thank you, Keith. Thank you so much for the session. Um, I have, I guess, one more question. We'll take that and then we'll end. So, as an expert,
Sure.
which areas do you suggest for academic research in wireline services?
Depends on how far you want to go. Just to be a wireline engineer, my background was civil engineering, which didn't really have a lot to do, with downhole mechanics or anything like that. A lot of times, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, uh, geologists as well, petroleum engineering gets to go to wireline. If you plan on doing wireline research, R&D for Schlumberger, you definitely either got to be a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer, with all kinds of extras to go beyond that, your master's, PhD. So it just depends. But wireline basically always just looks for people who have the ability to learn. And
Right.
once you get to that point, because there is no wireline school that you can really attend, they put you through months and months of training. And no matter how many years you're in wireline, you're never going to learn it all. Like I've done 18 years, and the more I do it, the more I realize I'm not going to learn it all. So that's how basically the wireline industry is looking. What's your view on open hole logs? It goes away from wireline department, comes more with LWD logs. Uh, there's a major cost in LWD and wireline because of how fast and a little bit more accurate in real time it is. Definitely, there's some great things going with the LWD technology, but people have been saying that right when I started doing wireline 20 years ago, and wireline really hasn't gone away. It's evolved. There's the horizontal memory logging that saves a lot of time and effort. There's a major cost savings for doing wireline open hole logging over traditional LWD. You lose an LWD set down hole in drilling conditions, you're talking millions of dollars lost. Whereas a single wireline string might be only maybe under $1 million. So instead of taking the liability of one, you choose to go with the other. So I think they're both be up and coming. It depends on the application, but you can't beat the accuracy of wireline open hole logs.
Right. I guess the person would have received, I can't see his name, it's 1+5. Okay, so I guess we're done with the questions. How do we connect with you? LinkedIn? And
LinkedIn is the easiest way. Just reach out through there. Happy to try and answer any questions I get, but no, it's great being here.
okay. Thank you, Keith. It was great to have you. It was really a knowledgeable chat with you. And I guess the audience as well asked many questions and got knowledge from you. So thank you once again. And we sure look forward to many other conversations in future. Have a good day.
Have a great day.
Yeah, stay safe. Bye, everybody.